Okay, I want to play a clip, and I'll start with you guys here at the desk first and then go to the other two about this. Van Jones on CNN said black men will defend Kamala Harris, and Joy Reid on MSNBC said all black people need to vote for Kamala Harris too. Let's watch these two pieces of footage.
You start insulting black women, you're going to see something you haven't seen before. Black men are not going to put up with that. I was on a phone call with 20,000 black men. The word protect came up about 1,000 times. Protect this sister. Protect this sister. We're going to protect her. Protect her. You're about to see something you haven't seen before. Look, people messed around with Hillary Clinton and said a bunch of mean stuff to her. Black men set that out. We won't set this out. So I don't think that the Republican Party understands that all the work that they did trying to get us over there, two more days of this, it's going to be a problem.
Anthony Weiner, I mean, I felt quite uncomfortable watching that.
So did I. Just as equally uncomfortable if somebody told me they were on a phone call with 20,000 white men or 20,000, you name it. That just seems so 1950s, 1960s, like half a century ago that we used to divide ourselves by color and numbers like that, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I grew up, I'm Gen X, and I don't judge people based on their color. I love what Martin Luther King said. I judge people based on the content of their character. And to separate into a phone call with 20,000 people of a certain anything is quite disturbing to me in the year 2024. What's going on with that?
But I've read seen a lot of Democrats in the last 2 days saying they don't want Republicans to make her race an issue. And yet here you have people like Van Jones, I've got a lot of respect for him, making her race very much an issue. However, Joe Biden did say he wanted to have a female vice president. Let me bring in Tomi. Tomi, it seems to me there is a contradiction here between this demand for the Republicans not to make her skin colour or her gender an issue here. And yet here you have Van Jones and you have Joy Reid and others very much making her skin colour an issue.
Exactly. So the word DEI, or the acronym DEI, has become almost like woke did a few years ago. It was so celebrated by the left, and now they're running away from it. I don't know why. You guys run away from your own words on the left. But listen, you can't tout somebody as the potential first female black president and then say, but Republicans aren't allowed to say that. And just as you articulated, Piers, this has been driving me nuts for days. There have been so many people that say on the left, you must vote for her. If you're black, you got to vote for Kamala Harris because she's black. If you're a woman, you got to band together and vote for her because she's a woman. But then if Republicans say, oh, you're only voting for her because she's a black woman, then all of a sudden, how dare you? You're racist and you're sexist. You can't have it both ways. Democrats, liberals, leftists, you either celebrate DEI or we're not allowed to talk about DEI, but you can't have it both ways. So either you're excited about it or you're not. Pick a lane. Operation Coconut Tree is underway. God help you.
OK, Brian, you said this. You made a video saying that Kamala Harris was Trump's nightmare. You said if you could scientifically engineer the worst possible candidate for Trump to run against, she would probably look like Kamala Harris. Why would she look like Kamala Harris?
Well, instead of this election becoming a referendum on Joe Biden's age, now it's a referendum on two things. It is, one, the fact that you now have a prosecutor going up against a convicted felon, and she is able to, no pun intended, prosecute this case extremely effectively. And we saw that in her Wisconsin speech right off the bat, where she didn't shy away from this issue. She didn't hide from it. She went right in, and she talked about how she spent her career fighting against con men and frauds and sexual predators and cheats. Donald Trump is all of those things. So that's the first thing. The second is that she spent the last year going around the country, crisscrossing the country, speaking to young people, going to colleges, talking about the issue of abortion and reproductive rights. And Donald Trump has come out and taken credit for appointing 3 Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe, and he is proud of it. He talks about it over and over and over again. So you have a prosecutor against a convicted felon, and you have somebody who is responsible for the deeply, deeply unpopular policy of stripping women's reproductive rights, versus somebody whose goal here is to make sure that she signs legislation to codify reproductive rights.
Boy, he sure hit them Democrat talking points like a champ. I wonder if he's paid like Harry Sisson.
Tommy, it seems to me that Trump would be much better advised, as would J.D. Vance, rather than going ad hominem with Kamala Harris, however ad hominem she gets with Trump. Better to try and rise above it. It's not his greatest quality doing that, but to rise above it and pick her off on her record while being vice president, most notably given her position as a kind of immigration czar, when really by any definition of her performance, she's been a complete train wreck. You know, she said, don't come in, and 8 million people promptly came in. Would you think that's a better strategy for Trump Vance, is to just literally go after the record, not the woman?
I agree wholeheartedly. As much as I get a chuckle when Donald Trump calls her dumb as rocks Kamala or cackling Kamala, I laugh at that, but I'm also a diehard Trump supporter and a Trump voter. But I do worry, and I've been cautioning my own party and Trump supporters about this for the last few days, that it's not going to play well when Donald Trump does it with moderates and with the suburban women that he needs to win over. So I agree with you. Donald Trump needs to channel every ounce of presidential attitude that he has in his being, which for him might not be so easy. And he has to channel that, and he has to focus on policy, and he has to focus on rising above and really uniting the country at this point. Because if he just goes on the tirades with the name calling, it's not going to play well with the people that he needs to win. We might love it. We think it's hilarious, but he really has to buckle down. Same thing with J.D. Vance. And to the abortion point, you guys all know where I stand on abortion. I'm much more moderate than most conservatives are on this issue, and expect Democrats to resurrect 2022 and try to win on abortion, especially with Kamala as their nominee. It's going to be a blind spot for the Republican Party, and I would highly advise that J.D. Vance not make any super pro-life comments if he wants Donald Trump to win. It's going to be a huge blind spot. So that's just my warning. Some conservatives are not going to like to hear me say that, but it's the truth, and y'all need to hear it.
I think you're completely right. Brian, it seems to be a question of unity. One trick that Kamala Harris missed in her speech, it was not a bad speech at all. But one thing she didn't do, she didn't allude to the assassination attempt on Trump. And it's only been 9 days since someone tried to murder Donald Trump and actually shot him in the ear, killing him by 1/4 of an inch. Would it not have been a smart move, in between calling him, you know, a sexual predator and a con man and a fake and blah, 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 very ad hominem stuff? Would it not have been a smart move in terms of unity had she just taken a moment to acknowledge the assassination attempt and say how pleased she was that he survived it? Something of that nature.
Piers, I find it so bizarre that the onus is always on the Democrats, is always on the adults in the room to create unity. Where was everybody for the last 6 years calling for unity when Donald Trump was president?
Excuse me? We spent 6 years defending Donald Trump, trying to explain why he was doing what he was doing and that the media was out here lying about him. And you guys continue to perpetuate the lies, and then you started calling us names. It's been 6 years of trying. How much longer are we supposed to try? And we still do. But the fact remains, it's the Democrats that always threw the first punch, and we're only over here defending ourselves. Or defending Trump. And what were we met with? People would come and try to cancel us from our jobs. We got deleted from social media and the public square. We were only defending Trump from the lies, trying to explain his position. And no, you guys still believe he said to breathe in bleach. You guys still believe the narrative that he said very fine people on both sides. You guys still believe all of the nonsense that the mainstream media told you for 6 years. And you even went so far as to try to force people to wear masks. And if they didn't do that, they were canceled. And you also tried to force people to take a medical procedure that they didn't want, that they didn't trust. So don't come and tell me that the adults in the room are the Democrats and they're the ones trying to make peace. Where does all the name calling come from? Where do all the labels, where does all the cancellation attempts come from? Who has the support from the mainstream media? Where were the Democratic leaders back then telling people to chill out? No, instead, they were locking down the cities, they were locking down their states, they were forcing sick people into old folks' homes, spreading this thing. And now that they sense they're going to lose the election, Joe Biden has stepped down and they know Kamala Harris is a terrible candidate and Donald Trump has been shot, you're going to tell us that it's our problem, that we're the ones that need to calm down the rhetoric? We're not the ones shooting at the other one's candidates, right? Give me a break, dude.
And, as far as the violence is concerned, I feel like any effort to try to pin, again, the onus on Democrats in terms of lowering the temperature in this country is just a testament to the fact that the Republicans are graded on the curve. Remember, it was not the Democrats. While we're talking about political violence, it wasn't the Democrats who laughed at Paul Pelosi being bludgeoned with a hammer. That was Donald Trump. It wasn't Democrats who called for military tribunals for Liz Cheney. That was Donald Trump. It wasn't Democrats who laughed at a kidnapping plot against Gretchen Whitmer. That was Donald Trump. It wasn't Democrats who called for General Mark Milley to be executed. That was Donald Trump. It wasn't Democrats who posted a baseball bat photo with Alvin Bragg and threatened death and destruction if he was charged. So in all of these examples, Piers, it is not the Democrats who've done this. It's not the Democrats who've validated the use of political violence as a tool in this country. And it shouldn't be on the Democrats all of a sudden to be the adults in the room.
All right, Brian, to a point, Lord Copper, as we would say in the UK, right? It is the Democrats who for 8 years have screamed that he's Adolf Hitler. That's fairly violent rhetoric. You're comparing him directly to an absolute genocidal maniac who murdered 12 million people, including 6 million Jews in a Holocaust. So when you do that, that is violent rhetoric.
Piers, if Donald Trump acts like a fascist, it is not the Democrats' fault for calling him a fascist.
You're saying he is?
That is his
Hitler? He is Hitler?
No, absolutely not. But I'm saying he does act like a fascist. He does want to consolidate power in the executive branch. He does want to send the military into American cities. He does want to.
You have no problem comparing him to Adolf Hitler?
I am calling him a fascist. That's what I'm doing.
Again, hold up. More Democrat talking points. It was people on the right, independents, and people on the left that were laughing at those things. But he's not trying to calm down the rhetoric. He's here calling Trump a fascist and out here fear-mongering, saying that what Trump is going to do, when we have an example. Trump was president for 4 years. He left when he was supposed to. And if you remember, I've used this example before, but Trump is the one that doesn't want to call the military into cities. He's the one that let the state deal with that Chaz Chop situation that we had during the whole, Summer of Love nonsense. Not once did he send in the National Guard to stop any of the BLM riots, any of the Antifa antics, any of that stuff. He let the states handle it, and they handled it poorly, by the way. But it's still, Donald Trump does not want to send the military into any of these places. What kind of fear-mongering crap is that? Like, there's literally no example of it at all. And when he says he wants to consolidate the executive branch, he's just mad that Trump got to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices. One thing's for sure, this guy certainly does hit all of the Democratic talking points. He loves to parrot that mainstream media that wants to drive a wedge between Americans. And what's more fascist than what the DNC just did to the American people? They literally appointed Kamala Harris when not one person voted for her in their primaries. 14 million people voted for Joe Biden. They didn't vote for Kamala Harris. And don't give me this voted for her by proxy because she's his vice president. It would have been different if she was the front runner. And when she was the front runner or trying to beat Joe Biden to be that front runner, she couldn't secure one delegate vote. But then all of a sudden, over the weekend, suddenly from Saturday she had half of what she needed to Sunday she had all of what she needed. That makes no sense other than they are a fascist group that does not represent the American voter like our government should be doing. They do whatever they have to do to win an election so that they can have the power, when the power is actually in the American people. And that is what Donald Trump represents, and that is what Donald Trump did his first 4 years, was represent the American people.
Okay, let me bring that to you.
By the way, doesn't J.D. Vance call him out?
He didn't. He was equally wrong.
And didn't Donald Trump use language like vermin of the people, like basically echoing the?
So do you think it's right to compare him to Adolf Hitler?
I don't like comparing people to Hitler, but I will say that.
But there's a but here.
There's a but there.
Here it comes.
Really?
It comes. Yeah. If you talk like a fascist, if you act like a fascist, tell me a little bit about this mass deportation, Piers.
Who was the biggest mass deporter of people in American presidential history?
Barack Obama.
Eisenhower.
Barack Obama.
Barack Obama. Let me come back to Tommy. Tommy, it does make me laugh when I hear Anthony talk about fascism, and one of the criteria is mass deportation, and then he salutes Barack Obama for being the greatest
of a bunch of police officers to walk the street. Don't misquote me, Piers.
Tommy, for being the biggest mass deporter in the history of the United States in terms of any president, which he was. 3 million people he deported, right? So mass deportation is fascism if Trump plans it, but if it's done by Barack Obama, it is a magnificent thing which Trump should aspire to do. I can't quite follow that, can you?
Well, liberalism doesn't make sense, Piers. We know that. But I'll also say the majority of the American people support mass deportation, including Democrats. We learned about that a couple months ago in a poll. But what I don't understand with Democrats is that they're just clutching their pearls over a mass deportation effort when we have 10 million people that came across our southern border illegally, and that's not including the gotaways. They have no problem with that. People can just invade our country, break our immigration laws, no problem. But then if you take those people that came in the last 3.5 years and you said, okay, you broke the law, now you have to go back because you broke the law and you came in mass to our country, then all of a sudden they clutch their pearls in horror. Are you kidding me? That's what we need to do, because your president, your sleepy president, allowed 10 million plus people in, and it's not sustainable. Your own governors and your own mayors know that it's not sustainable. So the open border doesn't work, and the only way to fix an open border is to close it and then also deport the people that came in under it. That's just basic logic. I know you guys don't operate on that, but please save me your horror and your outrage.
Okay, Brian, save us your horror and outrage. I mean, this whole issue of immigration, I don't think any fair-minded Democrat in America could possibly look at the number of people that have come over the border illegally in the tenure of President Biden and not share everybody else's view that is completely unsustainable and clearly has been a failed policy on the southern border. Do you think it's been a success or a failure?
Well, all of this might suggest that we need some legislation on the border. And in fact, we had 3 senators, Kyrsten Sinema, Chris Murphy, and Republican James Lankford, negotiate a border bill that was not only the most conservative border bill that any Democrat could have signed, but it had no comprehensive immigration reform, which is historically the absolute condition that Democrats require. Instead, it had Ukraine aid that was attached to it, which passed anyway, which means there was nothing that the Republicans gave up. And yet Donald Trump issued his clarion call to Republicans because he thought it was too important to preserve the issue of the border as a campaign issue, and so he wouldn't allow this to be solved. So for Tomi and George, spare us the grandstanding about the border when I didn't hear either one of you come out and say that this border bill needed to be passed when Donald Trump was making sure that it didn't get passed because he wanted to make sure the border was as chaotic as humanly possible.
Donald Trump was not the president. How does Donald Trump have anything to do with that border bill? And how does a border bill that includes aid to Ukraine have anything to do with protecting people from coming across the southern border illegally? That border bill did not represent the will of the American people one bit. Only a few politicians that are probably getting paid a kickback somehow, one way or another.
But I want to go to Tomi quickly, just to talk about this issue of Benjamin Netanyahu coming to address a joint session of Congress. This is to boost support for his war, obviously, in Gaza. A lot of people, mainly Democrats, staying away from showing any support for this speech. What do you feel about that? I mean, in a democracy like America, when it's one of America's great allies around the world, should people be able to just stay away?
No, they shouldn't act like children and stay away. If we have to sit there and listen to Zelensky address us how many times now and beg for money, then we should be able to all come together and listen to the leader of the only democracy in the Middle East. But I think it's also very telling that Vice President Kamala Harris, who is your presumptive nominee, who wants to prove to the American people that she can handle foreign policy, something she's never really handled before, that she has instead decided to go to a sorority instead of hearing the leader from, even if she disagrees with the war, that's on her, but to even go and listen and preside over the Senate, which is part of her job, the fact that she is instead deciding to go yuck it up at a sorority is really telling, and it's exactly why they call her Brat Kamala and think it's so great. Well, it's an unserious person who's unserious about proving herself to the American people. She was not elected to be your nominee. She was anointed your nominee by all counts, and now she doesn't even want to show up to do the job she has right now because she wants to go speak to a sorority? Give me a break. What a joke.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, do you feel comfortable about Democratic lawmakers snubbing Israel's prime minister like this, whatever the view of the war?
I think that as far as Benjamin Netanyahu is concerned, I think that he is focused on his own self-serving interests. I think that the Democratic Party recognizes that. That is why he's become such a lightning rod, because this whole thing is about prolonging the war to help himself.
And another horrific take by this dude that looks like he could be the third Krasenstein brother. Having that position when it comes to foreign relations is a recipe for destruction, right? You treat your allies that way, they're not going to stay allies for very long. And so with that, I'm just going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.